So urbanization process. Syllabus में it is mentioned urban development in paper 2. But very clearly we have to also look into the process of urbanization or the urban developments which have occurred in the world. Although not mentioned directly in the syllabus, but if you look into, questions have been asked, or one question has been asked, what has been the pattern of urbanization since 1950 or 1970, something like that. So if we look into the pattern of world urbanization, here we are going to talk from continent point of view, what has been the patterns of urbanization in each of the continents. So यहाँ पर लिखा हुआ है नॉर्थ अमेरिका, I would preferably call it as Anglo America. So first if I look into what is the pattern of urbanization in Anglo America, which includes USA and Canada. So if you look into Anglo America, this green graph is telling me about Anglo America. So in fact अगर मुझे थोड़ा भी याद है, so So this was the type of pattern we were seeing. So very clearly, when did we saw that Anglo America crossed this period? Interwar period. They essentially crossed this in the interwar period. So as they crossed this in the interwar period, what we find that in 1950, if you look into their urbanization level, it was quite high already. It was around 64%. So in 1950, it was 64% level of urbanization. They had reached already. In 1970, their urbanization levels kept on increasing. And can you see in 2 decades, they grew almost up to 74%. So 10% increase in the urbanization. 74%. Then, can you see there was stagnation for almost nearly a decade? Up to 85 around, there was stagnation. So period which was between 1985, we find that there is no change and the urbanization level remained where? 74%. But since then the urbanization levels has been growing, and in 2010 you can see that their urbanization was around 82%. It was around 82%. So that means they have registered again a cumulative growth in this period of around 8%. Okay? So this is the growth of urbanization which is seen in case of Anglo America. Very clearly, if we look into Anglo America, can you see that this growth pattern is very clearly tied with the economic growth? Just after the war, there was huge investment in North America, which led to what? A period of economic boom. After this period of economic boom, if you remember, हमने late 60s में क्या देखा था? There was social relevance movement, याद है? And why that social relevance movement was there? There are a number of problems. One of the problems, if you remember, we talked about the economic crisis, which if you remember, we also talked about that it was tied with the energy crisis. याद है? So, can you see, during this period for nearly a decade and a half, the urbanization growth was what? It was limited because the economic opportunities were not growing. Clearly, here what will happen? After this, again, it has picked up because economic growth has followed. Okay? So here there was increase, here again there was increase, but during this period there was stable urbanization. So हमने एक चीज ध्यान दी थी, if you remember, कल भी हमने इसके बारे में बात किया था. If we look into what is the phenomena if there is no international migration in such developed countries, what will be the phenomena? There would be decline in the level of urbanization if there is no international migration, because in this stage there would be counter urbanization or suburbanization. So this first red situation would develop. This is one situation. This is the second scenario, and this one is the third scenario. Out of this, which of these scenarios I would say is represented by Anglo-America? It is third scenario. It has been on an average growing. What is the basic reason of this growth? It is international immigration is the reason for this growth. International immigration. We have already seen North America is one of the continents which has more flexible policy of urbanization. There is legal as well as large amount of illegal migration also taking place in North America. So this has led to what? This has led to continuous increase in the level of urbanization in North America. Okay? So this is one of the scenarios which we find which is developing in case of North America. So this is one of the pattern of urbanization process in North America. ठीक है, इतनी बात समझ में आई? So that is first thing about North American urbanization. So very clearly what we find, one important thing that we find in this pattern is it is tied with economic growth. Economic growth. That is one thing. Second thing, it is essentially result of the phenomena of international immigration. International immigration. So that is one thing. Now you tell me, if I look into Anglo-America, can I say there are other aspects as well which we can talk as a characteristic of urbanization of Anglo-America? You tell me which are the areas where urbanization is concentrated. Can I say there is urbanization of North America is highly concentrated in few pockets. If we look into these pockets, what are the main pockets which are there? The main pockets include the New England region. New England region is one area. Then Great Lakes region is another area. Then Canada's is St. Lawrence waterway. वहीं पर है. Waterway is another area where it is concentrated. And there are some pockets elsewhere, like one important area which has emerged is the Pacific coast. Pacific coast. Another area where it has emerged is the Gulf of Mexico coast. So can I say these are the important areas of urbanization? Elsewhere, the concentration of urban places is what? It is low. Density of urbanization is low. You know, we have seen Rockies widespread, natural landscape, and few urban places. The Great Plains, agricultural fields, and few cities would be present in them. So again, what we find, the urbanization in North America, this Anglo-America is what? It is highly concentrated in few pockets. So what we can say, there is uneven distribution. Uneven distribution. So that is one important aspect of the urbanization characteristic of North America. There are other important characteristics of urbanization of North America. We just said that urbanization in North America is a result of international migration. So if it is result of international migration, one important thing that we'll see is urbanization has a cosmopolitan culture. North American urbanization has a cosmopolitan culture. There you'll be finding all types of landscape, all types of religious places, variety of cultural practices. That is why North America is referred to as the melting pot of the world. It is the melting pot of the world. Despite this problem, despite this aspect, still problem exists with respect to assimilation of migrants. Still problems exist with respect to assimilation of migrants. Assimilation of the migrants. So if you talk about assimilation of the migrants, one of the problem, this tension which is there, it is reflected in the form of formation of ghettos. Formation of ghettos. These are referred to as from various names, like they are referred to as various names: Chinatown, downtown. These are various names which are given to these ghettos which are present in North American cities, Anglo-American cities. We have already seen what is a ghetto. Ghetto is a concentrated pocket present in a city where there is concentration of people from a particular community. It is a pocket in the city where there is concentration of people belonging to particular community. Now, such type of ghettoization in North America has been result of number of factors. Number of factors. More specifically, if we look into these factors, before 1960s, or up to 1960, right? Up to 1960s, such ghettoization was result of discriminatory land use and rent policy. And rent policy in favor of white population. White population. So white population had the right to not allow black people to live in their neighborhood. Also, they could discriminate in number of ways, like they could use, it was done through various ways, use of threat and other means of influence. Like police, etc., were also collaborating with the white people. As a result of which, what we were finding, the black people were not given place in the good neighborhoods, good, better developed colonies. Only place they were finding accommodation, they could find accommodation was such type of downtowns or Chinatowns. As a result of which, the concentration of people, Asians, blacks, increased where? In these downtowns or Chinatowns. Up till this time, mainly it was black population. because Asian population migration at that time, it was comparatively slower. Okay? So that was the situation. But 1960s was like a civil war kind of situation. Okay? And in this civil war situation, very clearly, there was a kind of debate which occurred within the North American society, whereby lots of rights were renewed. And now the land rights, many of the land use rights were also given to the black people, which were before discriminated. So particularly after 1960s, even it was before, but it has been more dominant after 1960s, there has been a phenomena which we call it as the white flight. White flight. So what is this essentially white flight phenomena? If in a colony there was, white people found that they were becoming less, or there was more concentration of black people. They felt unsafe, insecure. And what they did, simply they migrated on in other areas. So they left such kind of neighborhood. This phenomena is referred to as the white flight. Okay? So one of the factors due to which such concentration of people has taken place, particular community people, ethnicity people, it is that other ethnicities have left the region. Okay? So that is also has led to development of ghettos. There were other factors like other social factors. Very importantly, like for example, factor of religion. So particularly if you talk about, there are black churches. So even there is division between in the religion itself. Christianity, both of them have Christianity, but the Christianity which blacks belong, it is a bit different. So their churches also used to be different. Very clearly, such black churches had centripetal pull. Okay? In recent times, you can understand as Asians are migrating, there is again, this phenomena has become more pronounced. Like for example, if there is presence of Muslim migrants, where they would tend to be more concentrated, where there is mosque. Mosque will have that kind of centripetal tendencies. So religious institutions, presence of such minority religious institutions, they behave as magnets, which attract such population and again lead to creation of ghettos. Okay? So this ghettoization in the North American population has been result of what? It has been result of many factors. But one very important characteristic is this phenomena of ghettoization. Okay? Similarly, one more characteristic that you have to remember is that here there has been urban sprawl. Urban sprawl. The very important thing is here the urban sprawl has been both horizontal as well as vertical. It has been both horizontal as well as vertical. In fact, this horizontal sprawl has been fast, like the vertical sprawl, both have been fast. You can understand this horizontal sprawl is reflected in the fact that in North American urbanization you will find many conurbations. First time the phenomena of conurbation was found where? In North America. And one of the biggest conurbation, it is from Boston to Washington. From Boston to Washington in the New England region. It is the biggest conurbation of the world. Conurbation क्या होता है? Conurbation is an uninterrupted urban landscape. It is an uninterrupted urban landscape. Where there are no enclaves in between. So it will be result of what? Cities, large cities becoming sprawling, but also growth of many new cities, small cities, medium towns, and they fully merging into each other. Okay? So this is very important phenomena which is seen in case of the North American urbanization. ठीक है? So this is the case of North American urbanization. अब यूरोपियन की देखते हैं. यूरोप. So very clearly you can see Europe urbanization level was low. It was how much? 51% in 1950. So यहाँ पर देखें 1950 it was 51%. But if you look into this urbanization level continued to grow. Can you see? It has continued to grow up till around how much period? Somewhere around 80-85. Till this period it has continued to grow. After that the growth rate has what? It has slowed down. Can you see that? Or we can say 1980. It is 80-85 somewhere. Till this period what has happened? It has continuously grown. And after that we find that it has essentially slowed down. So हम यहाँ पर figure लेते हैं 80 का. So by 1980 this urbanization had almost reached where? Around 67.5%. After this, it has continued to grow, this urbanization, but it became slow. Very clearly you can see, particularly from this period till 2000, or here you see 1995, what was happening? It was around 70%. We find that the urbanization has reached about 72.5% by 2010. It is around 72%, you're right? It is around 72%. ठीक है? अब यहाँ पे क्या प्रॉब्लम हो गई? ये तो नॉर्थ अमेरिका के जैसा ही है, एंग्लो अमेरिका के जैसा, फिर ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? It is because here when we are talking about, this figure is inclusive of Eastern Europe and Western Europe. If I would have just taken the figures of Western Europe, it would show similarity with North American urbanization. And in 1950, you tell me, हमने पढ़ा है, was the second world still not completed its demographic transition? देखा है हमने? That means it was still undergoing the urban transition. So you can see what has happened during this period. In this 3 decades, the growth of urbanization has been quite fast. And again the reason was very clear, that what was taking place? There was Eastern Europe which was experiencing urban transition. So here fast growth was a result of Eastern Europe undergoing urban transition. Urban transition. But by 1990, more specifically by year 2000, what has happened? This Eastern Europe has more or less completed its urban transition. So after this period, what we find? Since Eastern Europe was now completing its urban transition, what will happen with the urbanization growth rate? It slowed down. There was slowing down of the urbanization growth rate. ठीक है? So here we find that there was slowing down of urbanization growth rate. Reasons are manifold. 2 reasons we can say. One, Eastern Europe has completed its demographic transition, demographic and urban transition. That is one. Plus, You tell me, can I say European policy is a restricted policy of migration? Europe has a more restricted policy of migration. Or restricted mat likho, you write less liberal. Less liberal. Liberal policy of migration. ठीक है? सो अगर मुझे इसमें से केस ढूंढना है, कौन सा होगा यूरोप? Can I say the second one? It is more near the second case. ठीक है? So this is the case of Europe. अब यूरोप के बाकी कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स को देखें. हमने एक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक लिया डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन. So what is the case of distribution? Can I say it is more evenly distributed in Europe? More evenly distributed in case of Europe. ठीक है? It is more evenly distributed in case of Europe. क्यों? इसका रीजन क्या होगा? Because Europe is divided into number of political units, sovereign units. That means many countries, each of them have their own urbanization levels. So again, there is more even distribution in case of Europe. Other things in case of Europe, if you talk about one thing, we talked about the nature of sprawl. Europe, there is more domination of horizontal sprawl. There is greater domination of the horizontal sprawl in case of Europe. If you talk about other aspects of urbanization that we find in Europe, one, we talked about the problems of cultural assimilation. Can I say, here also problems exist. Problems exist, but are less severe than Anglo-America. Why they are less serious than Anglo-America? Because there is less migration they allow. Their migration is what? Restrictive. They are more allowing white people. Majority of migrants coming in Europe are East European people. Coming from East Europe, Central Asia, Russia, all those areas they are arriving. So their assimilation is comparatively easier. But here also, since Europe has been for quite some time, has allowed more migration of other population, it is leading to some problems, like the violence which occurred in France, Paris, London riots which occurred. All these were examples of what? Such type of tensions which exist with the migrants. Assimilation here also is what? A problem. Okay? So it is not free, but the problem is less severe than it is the case of North America. Okay? So this is the case of European urbanization. अब तीसरे की बात करें, ओशियानिया. और ओशियानिया में यहाँ पर वी आर मोस्टली टॉकिंग अबाउट व्हाट? ऑस्ट्रेलिया एंड न्यूजीलैंड. So if you look into the pattern of Australia and New Zealand, what you will be finding, this is Oceania, this point. So 63% in 1950. It continued to grow, it registered some increase, and it became 71% in around 1970. But can you see that here it has actually fallen, and by year 2000 or 1995, around 2000, can you see that it had declined to 70%? In the year 2010, it has again picked up a bit, and it is now 70.5%. ठीक है? So you tell me, here in this period, Australia, New Zealand had just completed their demographic transition, and thus urban transition was still ongoing. So here, during this period, urban transition still ongoing. But what explains the decline here? Can I say this decline is a result of highly restricted white population policy, migration policy of Australia? It is result of highly restrictive white population oriented migration policy. It was highly racist policy. पहले भी बताया था माइग्रेशन के टाइम पर कि if you can live in Europe, if you can live in North America, why a white person, European person would want to go Australia? रेगिस्तान में कौन रहना चाहेगा? It's basically what it is, a desert. So far away from rest of the world. Who would want to live there? ठीक है? So again, very clearly, there was, this policy was not able to attract the white population as they thought. Did we saw that after 1990s they had to change their policy and had to become comparatively more liberal? So here, their immigration policy has become more liberal, as they have now allowed people from Asia and other countries. But it is again selective. Why? Because it was mostly about skilled workers. Okay? So today what has happened? It is less restrictive as it allows skilled migrants from other ethnicity. ठीक है? So this is the nature or pattern of the urbanization which has occurred in Oceania. अब बाकी पैटर्न की बात करें, distribution. So what is the nature of our Australian distribution? Can I say it has similarities with Anglo-America? It is concentrated on the coasts. If it is so, can I say यहाँ पर भी हमें वो sprawl की दोनों characteristics मिलेंगी? So we actually find that the sprawl of cities has taken both the forms horizontal as well as vertical sprawl. Vertical sprawl has occurred. Here, the urbanization is what? It is culturally more homogeneous. Till now it is culturally more homogeneous, culturally more homogeneous, because mostly it is white people. Only in recent times, other ethnicities have been allowed to enter. ठीक है? But with the entering of other ethnicities like Asian, Indians for example are very important migrants which are going there. Can I say there is again issues related with cultural assimilation with arrival of other ethnicities? With arrival of other ethnicities. What has happened? Problems of ethnic clashes have been found. So देखा होगा अक्सर इंडियंस को पकड़ के पीट देते हैं. Again it is a result of what? Same, the problem of assimilation that is there. So again this is the case of this one. So हमने अभी देखा था. Can I say Australia New Zealand is a classic example of one? ठीक है. So इन तीनों के एक एग्जाम्पल है. ऑस्ट्रेलिया न्यूजीलैंड इज एग्जाम्पल ऑफ वन, यूरोप इज एग्जाम्पल ऑफ टू, एंड एंग्लो अमेरिका इज एग्जाम्पल ऑफ थ्री. ठीक है. So this is the case of them. Now coming to others, one important area is Latin America and Caribbean. Latin America and Caribbean. So 1950 में Latin America का urbanization 41% था. You can see this is Latin America and Caribbean. 41%. By 1980, it had increased to, can you see, around 64%, 65% you say. By 2010, it has reached to 79%. So you can see, this is where it has reached. That means Latin America and Caribbean is the second most urbanized region of the world. It is the second most urbanized region of the world. Almost 80% of their population resides in urban areas. Resides in the urban areas. So you can very clearly see that here there are number of factors which are responsible for this type of growth. One important is that during this period, you tell me, can I say Latin America was undergoing its demographic and urban transition? So during this period, it has been experiencing its demographic and urban transition. Plus, you tell me, can I say, here very important thing is development opportunities are more concentrated in cities. In cities. As you can understand why, as two factors, one is physiography and second is typology of agriculture, does not allows, as physiography and typology of agriculture and typology of agriculture does not allow much agriculture growth. सो अगर साउथ अमेरिका का एग्जांपल लें, so this is South America. Can you see? दो जोन्स में आता है ये, ईस्टर्ली विंड्स एंड वेस्टर्ली विंड्स के जोन में. सो जो वेस्टर्ली विंड जोन में पड़ रहे हैं, एंडीज माउंटेन्स, एंड द एरिया वुड बी व्हाट? रेन शैडो इफेक्ट ऑफ एंडीज. सो अगेन नॉट वेरी मच पॉसिबल एग्रीकल्चर. द ईस्टर्ली विंड जोन, this is plateau, this is plateau, this is the rain forest. So again in these areas what will happen? There would be very heavy precipitation, one, not very conducive for agriculture, tropical humid conditions. This area which is Brazilian plateau, one, it is plateau, plus can you see this Brazilian highland, Serra do Mar and all those mountains which are present? These are uplifted areas. That means rest of this Brazilian island, that like this plateau of Mato Grosso, will it fall in rain shadow effect of these Brazilian highlands? Because it is easterly winds. ठीक है ना? So very clearly what we will be finding that here the area is not very suitable for agriculture. तो हमने एक बात बोली फिजियोग्राफी. अब यहां पर दो तरीके के एग्रीकल्चर ही डेवलप है. वन इज प्लांटेशन एग्रीकल्चर and other is ranching. So you can understand both plantation agriculture and ranching, they are not labor intensive. ठीक है? अगर यही मॉनसून एशिया होता, एक छोटा सा एग्रीकल्चरल फील्ड and it can accommodate many workers. Here very big ranch and 1, 2, 3, 4 more than enough. ठीक है? So it is not labor intensive agriculture which is practiced in South America. That means if these areas are, rural areas are in facing the second or third stage of demographic transition, population is growing, where people will go? Can I say they would migrate towards the cities? ठीक है? So their migration would be towards the cities. So where they are migrating? Towards the cities. Can you see? One of the biggest population concentration area is Rio de Janeiro. Others like the Campo, Sao Paulo. Can you see? Another important area is Buenos Aires. So these are the major cities where you will be finding that their population would be reside. So can I say their population has, or urbanization has similarity like Anglo-America and Australia? What is the case in them? Here the population distribution or distribution of urbanization is highly uneven, is highly concentrated in coastal areas. So ये बात समझ में आ गई जो यहाँ पर मैं बता रहा था, that why this much fast growth of urbanization has taken place, because rural areas में opportunity ही बहुत कम है. So majority of people will be migrating towards the cities. Now this has given a distinctiveness to the urbanization. One first important thing, हमने distribution की बात की हर जगह पर. So distribution is essentially what it is? Uneven. It is concentrated in coastal areas. देखो अभी तक जो हमने 3 एग्जाम्पल लिए थे उनमें मेन बात क्या है? देयर इज मोर कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ रैंक साइज रूल टू बी फाउंड. That means there is growth of both large and small cities. But here, if you look into the distribution, what is found? There is more primacy characteristics to be found. Greater primacy characteristics are to be found, are displayed, or हम कह सकते हैं metropolization characteristics. Primacy is a better word here. Primacy characteristics are found. So this is the aspect of distribution. अगर coastal areas में concentrated है, तो what would be the characteristics of sprawl? It is both horizontal and vertical sprawl. Vertical sprawl. बट यहाँ पर एक डिस्टिंक्टिवनेस है विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू, अगर मैं सबसे पहले कल्चरल डाइवर्सिटी, हम अपने सारे पॉइंट्स जो बोले हैं वो कर लेते हैं. कल्चरल डाइवर्सिटी, इट इज लो. कल्चरल डाइवर्सिटी वुड बी लो बिकॉज ऑल द पीपल आर माइग्रेंट्स आर व्हाट? पीपल बिलोंगिंग टू क्रिश्चियनिटी. याद है, देखा था हमने, दिस इज कैथोलिक क्रिश्चियनिटी रीजन. Also, majority of them are speaking Iberian languages. Either they are Spanish or Portuguese, they are very near, very close languages. Okay? So it is what cultural diversity is lower in them. But there is a distinctive urban problem which is there. What is the main? वहाँ पर हमने देखा था cultural assimilation. But यहाँ पर main urban problem is that out of the total urban population, 80% of it is living in slums. 80% of urban population resides in slums. It is residing in the slums. Here slums in, for example, Brazil में उनको बोलते हैं favelas. That means, can I say there is very high urban poverty. Very high urban poverty. So this is the distinctiveness of the Latin American and Caribbean urbanization. ठीक है? Then if you look into दो भाई, एशिया एंड अफ्रीका. भाई भाई हैं, देख सकते हो, पूरे टाइम भाई भाई रहे. सो एशिया 16%, अफ्रीका 15%. बट दोनों फिर मिल गए. 1970 both of them became 24%. फिर थोड़ा सा डिफरेंस आया, लेकिन अगेन यू कैन सी 1985 30%, बोथ ऑफ देम. ठीक है. ऑल्दो फ्रॉम यहां से हमें दिखाई पड़ता है एक गैप डेवलप होना शुरू हुआ हियर, लाइक दिस. ठीक है. सो इफ वी लुक इनटू, वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट एशिया एंड अफ्रीका. Asia and Africa. So Asia, 1950, it was, you can see, 16%. While Africa had 15% urbanization in 1950. Then in 1970, दोनों बराबर हो गए. It was 24%. Here it also became 24%. Then 1985, again they become equal. They remained equal, 30%. But after this there has been gap, and by 2010 here it has become near 45%. While Africa is around 40%. ठीक है. So if I explain what is this difference in the urbanization, or first of all, commonly, can I say both these continents, they got independence after Second World War? And can I say since this period they have embarked upon their development journey? Embarked upon their development journey. That means what they have been facing? They have been experiencing demographic and urban transition. Urban transition. But what explains the divergence after 1985? क्या हो सकता है रीजन? It is primarily related with the economic growth of East Asia. East Asia, Southeast Asia has experienced what? A faster economic development. Thus, urbanization in this region has increased at faster rate. So this growth is mainly what? This divergence is mainly related to the faster economic growth experienced by East and Southeast Asia. Experienced by East and Southeast Asia. ठीक है? So that has led to faster growth of overall average of Asia has increased compared to Africa. So this is the pattern. Future, both of these would experience faster urbanization growth. In Africa, it is believed that the situation can be more similar to Latin America. Okay? So what is going to be the future? Future, we will find that both will experience accelerated urbanization, but Africa urbanization is expected to reach South American levels. Why? Can I say it has a similar physiography and typology of agriculture like South America? That means in rural areas here there is hardly opportunities which are present. Thus people will be migrating where? Toward the cities. Okay? So this is the characteristic pattern of urbanization which is seen. Then there are other patterns which are seen. When it comes to the distribution, distribution is again what? It is concentrated, more concentrated distribution is found. In both these continents, what you find? In both these continents, you find there is primacy tendencies to be found. देखा था हमने इंडिया में primacy tendencies to be found. China में भी what is taking place? In China also you'll be finding it is the Han China where the concentration of the population in the cities is to be found. ठीक है, same thing अफ्रीका में almost all the countries have primate cities. So here what we find, it is there is strong primacy tendencies are found. Thus it is what distribution is highly concentrated and uneven. If you look into here, the sprawl is mostly horizontal. The sprawl is mostly horizontal type of sprawl. British type of sprawl is very clearly, or European sprawl is seen. So this is one more characteristic of urbanization. What is the diversity? Cultural diversity is medium. Why there is cultural diversity? Because in them own countries there is high cultural diversity. Like India has cultural diversity, Africa has cultural diversity. Okay? So there is medium level of cultural diversity. But this diversity is not seen in race. This diversity is what? It is mostly related with language. Okay? Language and ethnicity diversities can be seen. But it is not seen in case of race. Specifically, don't use the word ethnicity, because ethnicity is what? Sum total of many traits, including race. That is why don't use the word ethnicity. So you use the word, the diversity is mostly visible in the form of language and religion. Linguistic and religious diversity. Here again in both of them, because there is phenomena of metropolization or primacy. Okay? So here also, like Latin America, there is high urban poverty. High urban poverty. And both of these places has seen high or faster growth of slums. So this is a big problem that they are facing. Several forms of urban crisis they are experiencing, like the delivery of services, the traffic jams, the pollution, variety of type of urban problem they are facing. Okay? So that is the case of their urban problems. So ये वर्ल्ड का हो गया, the urbanization of the world. अब इंडिया के urbanization की बात करते हैं. Urbanization of India. So, growth की अगर हम बात करें, urbanization in India. So, urbanization in India has grown in 3 distinct phases. Three distinct phases in the growth of urbanization can be deciphered in India since the 20th century. Period of slow urbanization, period of medium urbanization, and period of rapid urbanization. There have been 3 periods which we can talk about. ठीक है, अब मुझे इसको फिट करना है, तो क्या मैं अर्बन कर्व या अर्बन ट्रांजिशन का जो डायग्राम बनाया था, कैन आई फिट इट इनटू दैट डायग्राम? ठीक है, ओनली थिंग इज हियर इस डायग्राम में हम फिट कर सकते हैं. वी कैन गिव डेट्स. दिस इज 1931. डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन हमारा स्टार्ट हुआ 21 में. अर्बन ट्रांजिशन में कुछ डिले होगा. देयर वुड बी अ टाइम लैग. सो 1 डिकेड का टाइम लैग दिखाई पड़ता है हमें. ठीक है, सो यहां पर 31 है. व्हाट इज द लेवल ऑफ अर्बनाइजेशन हियर? इट इज लो. सो यू कैन सी इस समय का जो अर्बनाइजेशन लेवल था वो कितना था? 12.2%. सो हियर it was 12.2%. Here we are saying urbanization level. It was 12.2%. या फिर अगर मुझे डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन मॉडल यूज करना है तो यहां पर मत बनाना 1931, यू मेक 1931 हियर. ठीक है, क्योंकि हमारा डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन 21 से स्टार्ट हुआ था. ठीक है, सो यहां पर इसको 1931 को यहां पे कर लेते हैं. सो दिस is the point. ठीक है, so this is what? This is the first period that we saw of the urban, when the urban transition, beginning of urban transition in India. After this we'll see. ठीक है, सो वेरी क्लियरली अगर मुझे इसके बारे में लिखना है, इट इज सेइंग पीरियड ऑफ स्लो अर्बनाइजेशन. व्हाई पीरियड ऑफ स्लो अर्बनाइजेशन? yesterday we saw there are 3 reasons for urbanization to take place. What were the 3 reasons? One, natural growth of urban population. 1, rural urban transformation and rural urban migration. 3 components are there. ठीक है, so why this time the population of urban areas was slow growing? Because all the 3 components were very weak. This was mainly the period of British. ठीक है, and in this period what we find? Can I say in this period? 1, India was essentially a colony. So Britishers developed India mainly as a under core periphery policy. So India was essentially what? A resource periphery. So very clearly what we find? There was very few urban centers which developed. So the rural urban transformation was what? It was slow. We know there were only few centers which developed as urban areas. और ये centers कौन से थे? Some port cities and some administrative headquarters which grew as the urban centers. ठीक है? So this is basically seen as the period of slow urbanization. पहला point हो गया इसका. So what we are saying here, rural urban transformation was slow. Why? Reason was essentially the policy of British. Second, rural urban migration के component की बात करें, so rural urban migration also, can I say it was slow? Because India was still to experience demographic transition. Even rural areas were, for majority of this period, where they were located? In the first stage of demographic transition. ठीक है, हमने क्या देखा है? अर्बन ट्रांजिशन कब होता है? जब रूरल एरियाज की ग्रोथ फास्ट होने लगती है. सो अगर ट्रांजिशन स्टार्ट होता है second period, 1921 में. So what we will be seeing, that population would take for it to become sizable, एक decade तो लगेगा. And after this 1 decade, we find now the process has begun. ठीक है, more specifically, it would deepen where? It would deepen first in the urban areas. सबसे पहले ये कहाँ पर deepen होगा? Urban areas में deepen होगा. Why? Because the medical technology reach would be more where? Urban areas. ठीक है, so इस period में we find the rural urban migration component was also weak. Third component is the component of natural growth. Can I say, इसमें लिखा भी हुआ है, low industrial development was there and famine, epidemic and high mortality. That means even the urban areas during this period were located in the first stage of epidemiological transition. ठीक है, even the urban areas were located in the first stage of epidemiological transition. So उनका natural growth क्या होगा? It would be slow. ठीक है, so this is the period of slow urbanization. Then comes the period of medium urbanization, 1931 से 61. Now you tell me, can I say during this period, can we say that the epidemiological transition began? The epidemiological transition began. Where it would have been more stronger? Cities or rural areas? It would have been more developed in the cities. So it was more developed in the cities. So can I say cities began to experience faster natural growth of population? Cities began to experience faster natural growth of population. Faster natural growth of population. So why here the period, why we are saying it is only medium slowly growing population? From 12.2% it just grew to 18.3% in 3 decades. So it was very slow. ठीक है? So it was very slow. So here we find that such a slow growth in urbanization, or it was medium growth, was essentially result of the fact that much of increase was result of natural increase. Natural increase of population. That means the components of rural-urban transformation and the components of rural-urban migration were weak. Rural-urban transformation and rural-urban migration were weak during this period. क्योंकि समझ सकते हो, 2 decades almost, again we were what? A colony. Only in the last phase there was acceleration in these components, the other 2 components. But for much of this period, we were essentially colony where development was very limited. Although during this period, Britishers took some efforts of development, and that is why there was a bit increase in the transformation and migration component, but it was again not very significant increase. After this period has come the period of rapid urbanization. Period of rapid urbanization. ठीक है, सो अब इसमें देखें, अगर हम मुझे यहां पर बनाना होगा तो यहां पर हमने क्या बनाया? यहां पर हमने इसको बोला 1931. ठीक है, अब यहां पर हमें दिखाई पड़ता है कि मुझे 61 बनाना होगा, तो एक्चुअली 61 बहुत ज्यादा दूर नहीं है. द ग्रोथ ड्यूरिंग दिस पीरियड वाज व्हाट? स्लो. सो दिस इज माय 1961. ठीक है, सो ये कितना हम बता रहे हैं, कितने परसेंट हो गया? इट इज 18.3%. 18.3% it has taken place. Now, अब इसके बाद the growth, if we look into, it is divided into 2 parts. Here we can draw one line and we can say 2011. 2011. And here what has happened? Now our urbanization has reached to how much? Around 31%, 31.16%. Urbanization growth has taken place. So here there is some acceleration of urbanization which is taking place. अब इसमें भी दो phases हैं. What are these phases? We find that अगर मैं यहाँ तक बात करूँ, this is if I take 2001, this is one phase, and after this the phenomena which has started, it is a different phase. ठीक है? Now 61, since this or during this period, can I say India was following. हम सबसे पहले बात करते हैं 61 से 2001 का period. This is basically what? Fast urbanization growth period. पूरा का पूरा this is fast urbanization growth period. But इसमें भी दो phases में मैं divide कर रहा हूँ. Why? Because of the component which is dominating. ठीक है? So first phase में, which is 61 to 2001, we find that the other two components are now becoming important. They are also contributing to urban growth. So what are the other two components? Rural-urban transformation and rural-urban migration. So why they are now becoming important? What is the reason they are now becoming important? It is because our planned economic growth led to creation of number of new cities. Okay, so many cities have grown, many type of cities have grown. If you take example, can I say one type of city which has grown is administrative headquarters. There were city capitals, there was state capitals, district headquarters, okay, tehsil towns. So many network of new cities have grown. That is one type of cities. Second type of cities, can I say this period has seen fast agricultural growth, green revolution. Can I say associated with green revolution there would be rise of rural market based cities. कल हमने पढ़ा था बाजार based models. So development of rural market based cities occurred and several other commercial centers, commercial and industrial centers grew. So number of industrial centers were established, several port cities were established. So what has happened with the network of cities? So many transportation junction cities arose. Okay? So with the planned economic development, what has happened with the rural urban transformation component? It has accelerated. Okay? And second thing, because these cities are growing, they would also have opportunities. What has happened with the migration component? It has also increased. But can I say still we find that in this period the relationship is what? Natural growth of population has outweighed the rural urban migration and rural urban transformation process. During this period the natural growth of population has still outweighed the rural urban migration and transformation or classification process. This is very much visible in this diagram. Can you see? 1971-81 कल भी बताया था, will not take this because this was the period when there was change in the definition of urban places. A new definition was adopted, as a result of which several rural areas were identified as urban areas. So it is not the representative year. Better representative year is 1981-91 decade. Okay? So in this 1981-91 decade, can you see what was the share of natural increase and what was the share of this net rural urban classification and rural urban migration? So can you see natural increase is around 64% and the net rural urban classification and rural urban migration was, its share was around 36%. Okay? So this was the case of here in this was census कौन सा था ये 1991 census. Then come 2001 census. In 2001 census में natural increase component थोड़ा कम हुआ. It became somewhere 58. That means rest, if you talk about, it was result of what? It was result of the other, it is 42%. That means net rural urban classification and rural urban migration has increased. Can you see now 2011 census very clearly reveals that the net rural urban classification and rural urban migration has overtaken the component of natural increase. Okay? So very clearly now in the first phase, what was the first phase जो अभी हम देख रहे थे? The first phase is 61 to 2001. What has been the relationship? This has been the situation. Still in this period, natural growth component has outweighed the rural urban migration and rural urban transformation component. ठीक है? What has happened after this period? The early decade of 21st century has seen that now it is rural urban migration and transformation which is more dominating component. ठीक है? So ये जो मैंने तुम लोगों को डॉक्यूमेंट दिया, this document is too much important. It will see, इसमें इतने सारे फिगर्स हैं, हमें और किसी चीज की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. Urbanization in India के लिए will not be needing anything. So many things is there. One is this chart which very clearly tells me how the pattern of urbanization has evolved. ठीक है? So जो growth हुई है, can you see here now the now the net rural urban classification plus rural urban migration component, it is somewhere around how much? Somewhere around 56% is result of this, and rest if you talk about 44% it is result of, sorry यहाँ पर होना चाहिए 44%, it is result of this factor. ठीक है? So this is basically, it has occurred in this third phase of urbanization. Overall, one thing is very clear, that our urbanization seems to be accelerating. There is some acceleration in the urbanization. अब यहाँ पर हमने ये पैटर्न्स की बात कर ली. यहाँ पर देख सकते हो 61 से 2011 तक के परसेंटेजेस भी लिखे हुए हैं. टोटल अर्बन पॉपुलेशन 61 में it was low, 78.94%. What has happened? It has grown. ठीक है? There were periods, can you see, यहाँ पर सबसे फास्ट अर्बनाइजेशन ग्रोथ हुआ है. बट अगर मैं देखूं तो ये फास्ट अर्बनाइजेशन ग्रोथ इज रिजल्ट ऑफ चेंज इन डेफिनेशन. ठीक है? नाउ नेचुरली व्हाट विल हैपन, आवर पॉपुलेशन वुड बी increasing. If you look into here, can you see between 2011 and 2001, the absolute growth has been very phenomenal. It has been almost 91 million. It has been 91 million. क्यों 91 million? What has happened with the urban population base? It has increased. Also, what has happened with the urban migration, rural urban migration? It has also increased. So overall, total migration, in absolute terms, it is very high. 91 million, you can understand. So many countries don't have even total population of this much. And we are adding only in our urban places this much of population. अब इस में हमें कुछ पैटर्न्स दिखाई पड़ते हैं इंडिया के मैक्रो अर्बनाइजेशन के. Now, one important pattern which we can see here is some important characteristics. अब इसका heading में लिख रहा हूँ, some important characteristics of macro urbanization pattern of India. So if we talk about these important characteristics, first important characteristic is that macro urbanization level of India was low. India was low. ठीक है, सबसे पहली बात, अब इसको लो की बात करें तो in 2000, for example, in 2011, the macro urbanization level of India was how much? 31.16%. In 2010, overall Africa urbanization was how much? 40%. Overall Asia urbanization was 45%. So compared with the other parts of developing world, it is quite low. ठीक है? So compared with other parts of the developing world, it is quite low. So what is the reason for this? Essentially, the reason lies in the strict definition of urban places applied in India. Urban places applied in India. So strict definition, we know there are two type of urban places: census towns and municipal and other towns. So one is the census towns. उनकी characteristic क्या होनी चाहिए? First, population size greater than how much? 5,000. Second, population density of greater than or equal to 400 persons per square kilometer. And third, the occupation should be 75% of occupation should be non-agricultural. So this is one of the definition. If all the three are fulfilled, then only we recognize that as a census town. ठीक है? Then there is other towns, and other towns are those which have recognized municipalities, cantonment boards, etc. If such type of institutions are present, then also we classify them as the towns. So we have very strict definition in India. of urban places. This is the main reason. In other developing world countries, only population, sole criteria of population size is taken as the definition of urban places. So, in most of other countries, most of other countries, sole criteria of population size is taken to recognize urban places. Urban places. In most of them, in majority of them, what we find, population size of 5,000 is taken. In many of them, it is even lower than this. ठीक है, so अब इसको देखना है, इसके impact को. I have given you something for this also. Here, you see. So if you look into this, can you see, this is the official census definition. If we go by official census definition, in 2001 it was around 28%, and in 2011 it was around 31%. But if we relax the definition and if we just take population size, suppose if we think India is a very populous country, so we take population size of 10k plus, more than 10,000. So if we take this, then in 2001 the urbanization level should have been 34%. In 2011 it should have been 37%. If we take what majority of countries are taking, 5,000 plus population, then you can see that our urbanization would have been 44% in 2001 and 47% in 2011. Okay? So why our urbanization level is low? It is mainly factor of definition. ठीक है, इतनी बात समझ में आई? It is essentially a factor of definition. So ये एक हो गया पैटर्न. देन दूसरा पैटर्न देखें, सेकेंड इंपॉर्टेंट कैरेक्टरिस्टिक पैटर्न, दैट macro urbanization growth rate has been slow. Macro urbanization growth rate has been slow. ठीक है? So it is not growing very fast. The levels, they are lower and also not growing very fast. Now what is the essential reason if we look into this phenomena? Here essentially the reason is related with the fact that if you look into, this is the rural population base and this is urban population base. ठीक है? Even if it is experiencing faster growth because of what? Because of both natural increase plus rural-urban transformation plus migration. Even if it is experiencing faster growth, can I say, because the population base here is so big that even if lesser population growth, suppose ये हुआ, यहाँ पर ये population growth हो रहा है, ठीक है, overall average में क्या आ जाएगा? It would be slow. It would not be reflected too much in the average. Because यहाँ पर इतना कम population growth rate भी basically क्या कर रहा है? It would, in terms of absolute numbers, it would transform into bigger, much bigger figure. ठीक है? Here, little bit of, here even if it is higher, we still find what? It is not too much reflected in the population. So, यहाँ पर अगर देखना है तो, again come back to the first page. So, we are finding urban population, the annual exponential urban growth rates were quite good, 3%, 2%, like this they have been there. ठीक है? You can see there is rural-urban differential भी देखो. Since 71-81, can you see? Every time urbanization growth rate has been higher. ठीक है? It has been higher. But it is still overshadowed by what? The rural growth, because rural population base is large. Overshadowed by the rural growth because the rural population base is large. ठीक है, अब इसको और थोड़ा डिटेल में देखना है तो विल सी. Okay, can you see this differential which is there in the natural growth rate, demographic divergence which is there in the natural growth rate between 1975 and 2011. This is the demographic divergence. Can you see demographically who is growing naturally more? Rural areas, they are experiencing faster natural growth. Why? Can I say because rural areas are still located in second stage of demographic transition, while urban areas are reaching third or fourth stage of demographic transition. Demographic transition. So, यहाँ पर हम एक और component add कर सकते हैं. These are also located where? In the second stage of demographic transition, while these are located where? In the third or fourth stage of DTT, demographic transition. Fourth stage of demographic transition. ठीक है? So even if you add the component here of rural-urban transformation and migration, still what we will find that rural population growth would overshadow the urban population growth. And as a result of which the overall urbanization growth rate would become what? It would not be so much faster. ठीक है? It wouldn't be so much faster. There is this demographic divergence which can be very clearly seen. Now, if you look into which are the states where this is taking place faster, it would give me further idea about how it is so. Some of the states are experiencing faster urbanization growth. So, which are these states? States like Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, these are experiencing faster urbanization growth. So can you see what is the rural-urban demographic divergence in them? There is no such demographic divergence. In them, the rural areas are also experiencing lower population growth. ठीक है? Their population growth rate has also slowed down. अभी इसको हम अलग से कर रहे हैं. I'm just showing you. ठीक है. But if you look into the states which are more underdeveloped, can you see here the urbanization growth rate is slow? In all these states, we'll find that urbanization growth rate is slower. Why it is slower? Can you see the divergence between rural urban? Demographic divergence is bigger. ठीक है? Here the demographic divergence in them is bigger. So very clearly we find that here it is slower process. अभी देखते हैं और भी reasons हैं, but this is the case. So from India's perspective, what we find when it comes to the overall growth rate of urbanization, why it has been slow? It has been slow because of large population base, large rural population base. So large rural population base allows rural population to grow at very fast rate. Also, it being located in the second stage of demographic transition. So overall, rural population growth has been faster. So even if some of the population is extracted from the factors, the other two factors, कौन से दो factors थे? Rural urban transformation and rural urban migration. Even if it is extracted, the overall growth of rural areas would be what? It would be much bigger. So अब अगर simply इसको calculate करना है, तो you can calculate total urban population. Suppose हम लेते हैं this period. Suppose we take this period 71. So यहाँ पर urban population growth कितना हुआ? 3.23%. or you take here 159 millions. It was 3.79%. So इस population पे calculate करोगे 3.79% से कितना population growth हुआ. ठीक है? And you take the total rural population, it should be multiple times of this, and you calculate that even if it is this 1.76%, what will happen? It would be quite big. It would be much bigger. इसमें दिया होगा rural का भी figure. दिया हुआ. So you can see rural population in million. हम कौन सा फिगर ले रहे थे उस समय? 81 ले रहे ना. कैसे भागता है ये? So 81. So 81, it is 523.86 million. ठीक है? So even if the rural population growth rate was slower, then also you calculate it from the base, and there would be more number of people added in the rural areas compared to the number of people which are added in the urban areas. ठीक है? So very clearly that means what will happen? We will be finding that the urbanization rate would be slower, growth rate would be slower in case of India. So primarily it is function of what? Is the rural population base. Being larger, it overshadows the urbanization growth. Overshadows the urbanization growth. ठीक है? So अगर मैं लिख रहा होता तो I would have just prepared an example of any of these censuses. ले सकते हैं हम example? Like अगर मैं चाहूँ तो इसी को example ले सकता हूँ. ठीक है? But इसमें थोड़ा सा different हो गया था. So you take up till any one of these. 81 is a very representative year. सबसे ज़्यादा urbanization growth हमने देखा fastest. So that is why I am taking 81 as the representative year. So I would just give an example. Calculations कर लूँगा. Like I can calculate. यहाँ पर हम बोल रहे हैं 523.86. So I am saying here this with respect to 523.86. ठीक है, so 1.76% of 523.86 million total calculate कर लेना, how many millions it would be? ठीक है, and here 3.79 of how much million? 159.46. so 3.79% of 159.46 million. ठीक है, so again you will get the how much was the actual increase which occurred in rural areas and which occurred in the urban areas, and we'll find that despite being urban growth fast in absolute terms, high in absolute terms, we'll be finding it is not reflected in percentage terms. ठीक है, and that is why we'll be finding that the growth rate has been slower. If you have to just understand how much is the magnitude of this growth, in 2011 we added 91 million people to the urban process. 91 million people to the urban process. But again in the same year there was rural addition. It was actually the first time when urban addition exceeded rural. It was 90 million. 90 million. So again the overall urbanization growth which should have happened, it was what? It was slower. So it is overshadowed by the so much of rural population base that we have. ठीक है, so this is one very very dominant factor we find that because of which it is so. So what we are saying that in absolute terms it is still very high. Despite this slower growth rate, in terms of the growth rate, it being slower, in absolute terms, it is very high. So United Nations Population Division predicts that in next 3 decades there would be addition of 300 million people. 300 million people to urbanization in India, to urban places in India. Urban places in India. ठीक है, so this is basically the case of India's urbanization. So many of the figures are misleading because they don't tell us what is the absolute magnitude of urbanization that we are going to experience. Very clearly 2011 census has revealed that in India urbanization process would further accelerate in future. There will be more number of people added, as what is happening with the urban population base, it is increasing. So it is going to accelerate in future. ठीक है, so India के macro urbanization process में national level पर what we find, this is the patterns which are emerging. Then एक तीसरा point, हमने 2 points अभी तक कर लिए with respect to macro urbanization. Third aspect is there are regional variations. Regional, or I can say interstate variations. Interstate variations are there. अब interstate variations में दोनों की बात कर लेते हैं. One is the macro urbanization levels. The macro urbanization levels. And second one is the growth pattern. मैक्रो अर्बनाइजेशन लेवल्स एंड द ग्रोथ पैटर्न. अब मैक्रो अर्बनाइजेशन लेवल्स के लिए यहाँ पर मैंने दे रखा है 2011 सेंसस के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से देखें तो वी कैन कैटेगराइज द स्टेट्स इनटू थ्री कैटेगरीज. वन विच आर हाई वेयर अर्बनाइजेशन लेवल इज अ बिट हायर. I am keeping those which have urbanization over 40%. Over 40%. So, Delhi, Goa, Mizoram, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Maharashtra and Gujarat. These are the states and UTs where it is higher. States mainly it is given here. So, these are the ones where it is higher. Then there is medium. So you can see medium वाले कौन से हैं? कर्नाटका, पंजाब, हरियाणा, आंध्र प्रदेश, मणिपुर, वेस्ट बंगाल, उत्तराखंड. They have medium level of urbanization. Then there is a lower level of urbanization in majority of EAG states. Northeastern, Himalayan, many of these will be finding what? There is low level of urbanization. Lowest is found in Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh has lowest level of urbanization in India. ठीक है, followed by Bihar. Now, अब इसको मुझे explain करना है. There are a number of reasons for this. First of all, why some of these have higher urbanization level. Highest was found in Delhi. Delhi is mostly not a state, it is union territory. ठीक है. So, very important thing, if you leave the case of Mizoram, इस सारी categories में can I say these are developed states? The high category states are essentially what? Developed states. These states have seen accelerated economic development, socio-economic development. Accelerated socio-economic development. ठीक है. So that is the primary reason why we find that here it is the urbanization levels are high, are found to be higher. ठीक है. In recent times they have also, particularly after 1991, they have seen accelerated urbanization growth. Can I say historically urbanization is more deeper in them also? Like the coastal states of Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, others like Goa, Kerala. ठीक है. So already in them the urbanization was higher before. They've also seen more accelerated urbanization growth since 1991. अभी देखते हैं क्यों ऐसा है, but this is the case. So all these are the factors due to which what we find these states have higher urbanization levels. ठीक है. They have higher urbanization levels. On the other hand, lower state categories में देखें. So what is the situation of lower categories? These are mainly rural societies, underdeveloped EAG states, backward states of India, where what has happened with the level of industrialization and development? It has been slower. So what is happening in case of opportunities in the cities in them? It is low. Economic opportunities or employment opportunities in the cities, in them has been low. First category of states ने क्या किया है? ज़्यादा investment attract किया है. This low category of states have not been able to attract investment. As a result of which, in these states, migration is mainly what? Out migration, out of these states. And where it is going? It is going towards the first two categories of states. ठीक है. So overall, we find that in them, the migration, the urbanization levels are low. Rural growth outshadows the urbanization growth. So overall, here the urbanization levels are low and the growth is slow. Medium इन दोनों के बीच की कैटेगरी है, where we are finding. अब इसमें कुछ states हैं like Mizoram, Manipur, you can see. Here it is primarily result of the other factors. It is mostly guided by. Uttarakhand is also one of the case. It is structural factor. Here the development has been very much guided by the government and the subsidies which are being given by the government. The hard terrain makes it what? Difficult for the rural areas to grow. In the rural areas, you can understand if government has extended medical technology, can I say it would mean that rural areas also people will be experiencing high population growth rate, but वहाँ पर is there enough opportunities located? Enough opportunities are not located in the rural areas. So what will happen with the people? They will have no other choice but to migrate towards the cities. ठीक है? And in these states, the government policy of solving the problems of backward areas like the backward regions grant fund, others like the this hill and backward area, hill area development program. ठीक है? All of these have led to what? Greater subsidy being given. And here many such growth centers have been established, growth points have been established in the form of the state capitals, in the form of the district headquarters. Administrative towns have mostly grown here, as a result of which you'll be finding that they have attracted number of people. Okay, so this is the case of the variance in the urbanization level. Now, अगर अब हम देखें variance in the urbanization growth rate, growth pattern. So inter-state analysis में there was two phases. So there was stark regional variations in urbanization in India. The industrially developed states are characterized by much higher level of urbanization than the national average. These include states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Punjab, West Bengal, Haryana. Similarly, states like Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, etc. are characterized by medium level of urbanization. On the other hand, Himalayan states include northeastern and with Odisha are characterized by very low level of urbanization. So, अभी हमने इसको देखा. पैटर्न की अगर हम बात करें तो पैटर्न ऑफ ग्रोथ देयर आर टू पैटर्न्स, फेज 1 एंड फेज 2, पोस्ट 1991 and before that, since independence to the new economic policy and post new economic policy. Now, here what we find, one very important thing was, you tell me, can I say, is phase mein, if I look into, what was the model of development that we adopted? Can I say it was Nehru-Manlowis model? In this period, the model of development that we adopted was Nehru-Manlowis model. Now, in Nehru-Manlowis model, main investment was to be done by private sector or public sector. It was public sector. So, in this period, government is the main investor. Can I say government is also guided by socialistic motives? Government has socialistic motives. Government is not running just behind profits. It has socialistic motives. So can I say we find that growth poles, growth centers and growth points emerged in across India? There was emergence of growth foci across India. Across India. For example, in all the states there was establishment of growth poles in the form of state capitals. In all the states, there was emergence of growth centers in the form of district headquarters. Even lower order cities developed in all the states. Also, many of them were purposefully established in the backward states of India. They were purposefully established. हमने देखा है, भिलाई हो गया, बोकारो हो गया, all of these were basically what? They were purposefully established in the backward states of India because we wanted to deal with the problems of backwardness. Okay? So that means, you tell me, during this period, would there be opportunities in both parts of India, developed and underdeveloped? There was creation of opportunities in even the underdeveloped states of India. So if there was creation of opportunities even in the underdeveloped states of India, you tell me, can I say one एक factor यहाँ पर होगा, in all these cities which were established, there was extension of medical technology. So what will happen with the natural growth? It would be higher. 1, 2. What will happen with their power to attract population? It would also increase. It would be higher. Okay? So what we find in this first phase, the interstate divergence was low. And all the states of India were experiencing fast urbanization or similar level of urbanization growth. In fact, there were some of the years when actually the states which were backward states experienced more urbanization than the developed states of India. Okay? So again, it is essentially a result of what? The opportunities more decentralized, more distributed, well-distributed opportunities because of the model of development that we adopted. Now you tell me what will happen after 1991. Can I say we have adopted the policy of LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization. As a result of this LPG policy, now there is significant departure from earlier decade has been visible, as many of the developed states like Tamil Nadu, Punjab, Haryana, Maharashtra, Gujarat and Karnataka have registered very high urban growth, much above the national average. Okay? So why they have been experiencing so much of high urban growth? Because now investment is primarily from private sector. And thus this investment is concentrated in the already developed states, already developed industrial clusters. देखा था हमने, याद है, SEZs have grown mainly where? In already developed industrial clusters. So much of investment has taken place in already developed states of India, both domestic as well as foreign investment has concentrated in these states. That means the job opportunities have mainly grown where? In these developed states of India. Okay? Very clearly that means these states have been experiencing what? Very clearly they have been attracting in migrants from the underdeveloped states of India. They have been attracting in migrants from the underdeveloped states of India. Okay? So they have been experiencing what? Very importantly, the higher in migration rates. They have become in migrating states. The underdeveloped states have become out migrating states. ठीक है? दूसरा फैक्टर अभी जो हमने बात किया था is this one. What has happened with the demographic divergence in the developed states? The demographic divergence has become low between the rural-urban growth differential. Growth. So demographic divergence between natural growth rate of rural and urban has reduced. ठीक है? So this is another factor. While in the underdeveloped states अभी हमने क्या देखा है? It has widened. ठीक है? So again we'll be finding that there the population growth rate would be slower. So again all these factors have led to what? The interstate variations in the macro urbanization process of India. ठीक है? ये हो गया? Now, if we look into, so this is the interstate difference. थर्ड अगर हम बात कर सकते हैं, वी कैन टॉक अबाउट द अदर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पैटर्न इन इंडिया इज, I can simply say one important characteristic of urbanization in India is that India's urbanization process is dual headed. डुअल हेडेड. अब ये नंबर कौन सा है मुझे याद नहीं है, पीछे देख लेना है, फोर्थ होगा ना. इंडियाज अर्बनाइजेशन प्रोसेस इज डुअल हेडेड. ठीक है, इसमें और भी चीजें लिख सकता हूं या इसको दूसरे टर्म्स में कह सकता हूं. डुअल हेडेड का मतलब यहां पर क्या हुआ, हियर मैक्रो अर्बनाइजेशन इज स्लो while metropolization is fast. मेट्रोपोलाइजेशन इज फास्ट. ठीक है, तो इसी को मैं दूसरे टर्म्स में भी बोल सकता हूं, इस कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स को. आई कैन राइट दिस एज सम अदर स्टेटमेंट लाइक इंडियाज अर्बनाइजेशन is top heavy. India's urbanization is top heavy. ठीक है, टॉप हैवी. सो अगर मुझे देखना है टॉप हैवी, तो ये देखा है हमने पहले भी, दिस चार्ट. So in total in class 1 cities, how many people are living? There is total 468 class 1 cities. Number of people living there is 70.2% in 2011. ठीक है, 70.2% people are living in them. You can see in India you'll be finding how many total number of cities are there, around 5,000. Around 5,000 cities are present in India, और उसमें से you are finding कि 468 cities are chosen by the people. That means just 10% of the cities have 70.2% of the people. Rest all are distributed in the other cities of India. अब इसमें भी देखो हायरार्की. Out of this 72%, यानी कि in percentage terms, I am saying out of the total urbanization in 3 cities which are 10 million plus, 12.9% of people are living. 13% केवल 3 cities में रहते हैं. 5 से 10 मिलियन सिटीज 5 हैं, चेन्नई, बैंगलोर, हैदराबाद, अहमदाबाद एंड पुणे. एंड हियर व्हाट वी फाइंड, अराउंड 10%, 9.6% ऑफ पीपल आर लिविंग. 2 से 5 मिलियन देर आर 11. यहां पर देखो नंबर बढ़ गया बट परसेंटेज क्या हुआ, कम हो गया. ठीक है, सो इट इज 7.7%. हियर 1 to 2 million, 33 cities now. And only they together cumulatively account for 12.1% of the total urban population. 2 फिगर लिखे मैं यहां पर, नीचे वाला ब्रैकेट वाले फिगर्स याद करो, अपर वाले फिगर्स, if you take total class 1 cities to be 100%, then the upper percentage figures are there out of the total class 1 cities. So you don't take that, you take the lower figures which are written in the bracket, because it is out of the total urban population. So total class 1 in million plus cities, how much we are finding population? We find that it is 42.3% of people are living in them. ठीक है, अब देखो उसमें भी ग्रेडेशन देखो, उसके नीचे जाते हैं जब हम 0.5 मिलियन टू 1 मिलियन. ठीक है, 0.5 million to 1 million, that is 5 lakh to 10 lakh. इस तरह की टोटल सिटीज आर 44 and total population living in them is 8.3%. If you look into the population which is 1 lakh to 5 lakh, there are 372 cities and there only around 20% of people are living. ठीक है, so much big difference in the numbers. So अब क्या मैं इसको I can show this by some kind of diagram. कई बार हमें numbers नहीं याद होते. So when we cannot remember numbers, we can use some diagrams to show them. So can I say here, when we are talking about it is the class of towns, town size classes or class of towns. Here I can say class 6 cities and here I can say metropolitan cities. ठीक है, सो यहां पर हमें दो तरह के सिचुएशन दिखाई पड़ रहे हैं. एक इन टर्म्स ऑफ नंबर of cities. Second is in terms of population residing in them. Residing in them. So you tell me, can I say यहां पर हमें कुछ इस तरह की सिचुएशन मिल रही है. There is an upright triangle, but can I say when it comes to the population size, our triangle becomes what? Inverted. अभी जो हमने देखा उसको हम क्रिएटिवली इस तरह से दिखा सकते हैं. ठीक है, ऑन वन साइड देयर इज इन टर्म्स ऑफ नंबर ऑफ टाउन्स द ट्राइंगल इज अपराइट. इन टर्म्स ऑफ पॉपुलेशन रिसाइडिंग इन देम वी फाइंड इट इज व्हाट? इट इज इनवर्टेड ट्राइंगल. ठीक है, सो दिस इज वन बिग प्रॉब्लम दैट our India's urbanization has been facing. ठीक है, अब इसमें बहुत सी चीजें हो रही हैं. What is the basic reasons if we look into this type of situation? One reason you can see is this reason. What has essentially happened with the growth of cities? Can you see all the, अब इसमें मुझे याद करना है तो I'll just remember this 20% mark. This 20% mark I will remember. This is percentage growth. Here it is growth in percentage of urban population by size class. ठीक है, ये ऊपर वाला काट देना, वो दूसरे फिगर का आ गया इधर, नीचे वाला है. ये जो ऊपर वाला है ये इस वाले फिगर का आ गया एक्चुअली में. So here 20%. Can you see all of them are just have not grown beyond 20%. What has happened with the share? It has simply decreased. It has declined. While what has happened with the class 1 cities? It has very clearly increased. Can you see particularly after 1931? अभी ये हमारा अर्बन डेमोग्राफिक डिवाइड था. फर्स्ट फेज अर्बनाइजेशन का कौन सा था? टिल 1931. सेकेंड फेज वाज 1931 to 61. सो कैन आई से ये प्रोसेस था, ये पीरियड था व्हेन ब्रिटिशर्स आल्सो स्टार्टेड सम डेवलपमेंटल एक्टिविटीज अंडर प्रेशर of the national movement because they were sure that there would be second world war. They wanted to appease the people of India. so that they help in the war efforts of British. So as a result, what they did, they started several developmental activities even in India. So there was a number of towns which grew, two type of towns which grew. They were mostly what? Commercial cities like port towns. Also there was growth of some administrative towns. ठीक है, so during this period we find that this was the case. इससे पहले हम देखेंगे अभी जब मेट्रोपोलाइजेशन की बात करेंगे, मेट्रोपॉलिटन सिटीज, मेट्रोपॉलिटन रीजन्स ऑफ इंडिया, we'll see that before 1931 there was only one metropolitan city in India, that was Kolkata. Later ultimately what happened? Between 1931 and 51 there was addition of number of them. In fact Kolkata and there was one more, Mumbai, दो थे. And after that there were three more added. These were essentially Delhi, Chennai and Hyderabad. Three more cities were added till 51. But one thing you can see, since 1931 our growth has been what? It has been growth pole centered growth. It has been growth pole centered growth. Can I say यही मॉडल हमने इंडिया इंडिपेंडेंस के बाद भी यूज किया? We followed the same model. We followed essentially the under Nehru Manlobis model. It was oriented towards industrial clusters. ठीक है, development of industrial clusters was our main policy. So where the main growth was centered, हमने कहने के लिए हमने क्या किया? We established so many cities. But the problem was we didn't had the investment. Our investment was low. Thus what we did, we concentrated investment in capital cities, some commercial and industrial centers, also some port cities. All these areas we find what? Have experienced much faster growth, because only these were the areas where job was available. ठीक है? Thus they were able to attract more number of people. So what has happened? The growth of class 1 cities has been phenomenal, while the others have continued to stagnate. ठीक है? They have been just stagnant. That is one thing. Now there are other things as well. So एक तो हो गया growth in terms of population percentage. अब ये growth क्यों हो रहा था? If we look into this, why this kind of growth was taking place? This kind of growth was related with all the three factors. Natural increase was one factor. Rural urban migration was another factor. And third was very clearly rural urban transformation was another factor. ठीक है, अब देखते हैं इसमें you take this case of cities with 1 lakh plus population. What has happened with the number of cities? 1 lakh plus population cities were in 1901 23. What happened to their numbers? It has continuously increased. Total number of such cities has kept on increasing, census by census. That means more number of cities have become class 1 cities now. What has happened with metropolitan cities? Can you see again they have been growing in numbers. ठीक है? So that is one thing which has been taking place in this situation. This can be seen from ये वाला जो figure है, growth in number of towns by size classes. So can you see all the cities like class 1, class 2 is here. They have seen growth in numbers. Class 3 and 4 have also seen. Only cities which have not seen this growth is which one? Class 5 and 6. Their total numbers have de-accelerated. Why? Because class 2 have graduated into class 1, class 3 have graduated into class 2, class 4 have graduated into class 3, 5 and 6 have graduated to 4. But when it comes to rural areas graduating to 5 and 6, the process has been very slow. This process has been what? Broken hierarchy. We have a broken rural-urban hierarchy in India. There is a settlement hierarchy is broken. हमने इसके लिए diagram भी बनाया था, याद है? One diagram we have made that so here is the metropolitan cities. Here is other class 1. Here is class 2. Here is class 3. Here is class 4 towns. Here is class 5 and 6 towns. And finally there is here rural. So where we find divergence to be very big at two places, and the topmost hierarchy between metropolitan cities and other cities, and second between rural-urban divide. So because of this rural-urban divide, there is not enough number of rural areas transforming into the urban areas. पहले भी बताया, इसी डिवाइड को ब्रिज करने के लिए हम क्या कर रहे हैं? We are here so that it becomes here. We have started our Shyama Prasad Mukherjee rural-urban mission. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee rural-urban mission. Pura is part of this. So it is essentially what? Here, through Shyama Prasad Mukherjee rural-urban mission, what we are doing? We are identifying village clusters. For each of the village clusters, we'll establish in the central villages, there will be establishment of agro-based industries. Agro-based industries, processing units would be established. So what we are doing? We are trying to force this process of change. ठीक है? So very clearly one of the factors is the number of city growth, but more important factor has been very, very clearly what? The rural-urban migration. So today we are finding that what has happened? Why this metropolitan city? Why this phenomena which we are talking about is taking place? This type of phenomena, the main reason being that there is essentially what? Bypassing of the stepped migration process. It is essentially a result of bypassing of the stepped migration process. Here what has happened? There is absence of intervening opportunities. Absence of the intervening opportunities, which has led to what? Bypassing of the stepped migration process. ठीक है? So this is essentially the pattern of growth. इसमें एक और मैंने फिगर दिया है. You can also see कि किस तरह से even within the population of million plus cities में भी कितना ज़्यादा difference है. Here only we are taking into account top 20 cities. Can you see the growth of Bombay or Mumbai, Kolkata and Delhi? It has been phenomenal compared to the other million plus cities. Why? Because they are growing fastest. Majority of investment is concentrated where? In these cities. Okay? So as a result of which what we find, this kind of situation is to be present. So there is India's urbanization, जो हमने लिखा, India's urbanization is essentially what? It is a top-heavy urbanization. You can understand the consequences of this phenomena. अभी हमने थोड़ी देर पहले बोला कि there would be addition of around 300 million people in the urban process. So out of this 300 million people who are to be added in the urban process in the next 3 decades, where majority of it would go? Majority of it is going to the metropolitan cities. Metropolitan cities. जो रेशियो अगर 70 का रेशियो अभी और 50% भी अगर इससे जाता है, 150 million people just going into some 50 cities. उसमें से भी the ratio अगर ले लोगे तो you'll find that majority of them would go in three cities. Other 5 cities or top 20 cities, majority of them would be going. And very clearly in this context, it is going to be very, very disastrous. Because already we are facing so many types of urban problems. So what it would give rise to, can I say? It would give rise to more urban problems like urban poverty, slums, delivery of services, traffic jams, pollution, you name it, and you will be facing those type of problems in the cities. Okay? So it is a huge concern for the policy makers of India today. To bridge this gap, और इसमें भी मेट्रोपॉलिटन सिटीज में भी गैप है, हमने देखा. So to ensure, now अभी growth is taking place where? It is taking place, most of the growth is taking place in this 19 cities of India. Much of this growth is taking place. Or at best we can say some of this 52 cities in India. इसमें भी बहुत डिफरेंस है. So can I say, अगर मेरे को बस चलेगा तो in 8 cities के अलावा I would want growth to occur in all the 52 cities? Can we say that? This is, we are trying to ensure it through our smart city project. We are trying to ensure it through our smart city project. ठीक है? Obviously on paper, सच में तो you know very well, nothing is happening. Then, if I have choice, can I say I would like it to be distributed here in 468 cities rather than 52? So slowly this is the objective of Amrut project. ठीक है? The second project is what? Amrut. So Amrut is first smart city में हम केवल 100 cities को target कर रहे हैं. And in Amrut we are targeting number of more cities. Although not this 468, but more number of cities are to be targeted. Amrut के कुछ special component है. Amrut के अंदर हम केवल infrastructure पर mainly focus कर रहे हैं. Smart city project is more comprehensive program. Amrut में our main focus is on development of infrastructure. ठीक है? So if you talk about here we are taking उस अमृत के अंदर में सारे स्मार्ट सिटीज, ये अपर लेवल सिटीज आती हैं. ठीक है? जिसमें ड्रेनेज एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा बहुत सारे कंपोनेंट्स हैं जो इंप्रूव करने हैं. प्लस देयर आर सेवरल ऑल्सो अदर क्लास 1 सिटीज आर ऑल्सो इंक्लूडेड इन दैट अमृत प्रोग्राम. ठीक है? सो वी आर ट्राइंग टू ब्रिज दिस गैप. इन अदर वर्ड्स व्हाट वी आर ट्राइंग टू डू, we are trying to create intervening अपॉर्चुनिटीज. इंटरवीनिंग अपॉर्चुनिटीज कैसे बनेंगी? हमने देखा है जेंट्रिफिकेशन का फिनोमेना, याद है? देयर वी टॉक्ड अबाउट व्हाट? टुडे cities want to improve infrastructure. By improving the infrastructure, other facilities like law and order, etc., they would be able to attract investment. And if they are successful in attracting investment, then only they would become counter magnets to the presently growing cities of India. So, in दोनों के through smart city and Amrut, what we are targeting? We are trying to create secondary cities in India. That means we are trying to correct our urban hierarchy. Urban hierarchy. ठीक है? But simultaneously हम ये भी कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि we make our urbanization process more broad based. That means we also improve the condition of rural areas. And for that we have started the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Rural Urban Mission. We also want to improve the rural areas per se, their conditions. For that we have our programs like Manrega, programs like Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay, that livelihood mission. So Manrega is wage employment program, and the livelihood mission is what? It is self-employment program. So अगर हम rural areas में ही ज़्यादा job opportunities create कर दें, तो what will happen? There will be less migration from rural to urban. ठीक है? So again, we will be able to slow down this process, and that would help in the transition. We'll achieve a better and more balanced transition. अभी जो इंडिया में transition हो रहा है, it is very unbalanced and unsustainable transition which is taking place. We want this transition to be, urban transition to be more sustainable, more balanced. And इसके लिए हमें क्या चाहिए? Can I say it should not be like inverted triangle जो हमने देखा? It should have been more upright triangle or more near to it. It should have been there. More well distributed population in the cities. We want to achieve what? अभी जो हमारा पैटर्न है, it is more oriented towards multi-primacy. If you talk about what is our objective, we want to achieve the objective of rank size rule. ठीक है? So that is basically the objective through which we are trying to achieve. ठीक है? So this is basically the case of the urbanization pattern of India. अब इसमें एक और चीज बता देता हूं. यहां पर लिखा हुआ है जोग्राफिकल पैटर्न. जोग्राफिकल खटा करके मैं इसको बोलूंगा. यू टॉक अबाउट ज्योमेट्रिकल पैटर्न ऑफ अर्बनाइजेशन. ज्योमेट्रिकल पैटर्न ऑफ अर्बनाइजेशन, यू राइट. ज्योमेट्रिकल पैटर्न ऑफ अर्बनाइजेशन. सो इंडिया में हमें दिखाई पड़ता है कि जो सिटीज की ग्रोथ हुई है, दे आर शोइंग सम शेप्स, ज्योमेट्रिकल शेप्स. लाइक वन टाइप ऑफ वेरी कॉमन शेप विच इज शोन इज urban corridor and axis. Corridor and axis. Corridor, you know what is corridor? Axis is linear and corridor is a linear pattern which has some width also. So axis is a linear growth while corridor is a linear growth with some width. That is corridor. ठीक है? For this I have given you some diagram. Actually this type of pattern has been talked about by Ramachandran, that book I talked about. So again we find what? Can you see? Axial type of development, which is linear type of development, it has mostly occurred where? River alignments, coastal alignments and mountain alignments. River, coastal and mountain alignments. So you can see, for example, ये main rivers हैं, There is large number of cities which have grown on these rivers. Coastal cities so many, इसमें main ही बनी हुई है. Can you see several hill stations? They also show linear pattern of development. ठीक है? So we find that there is foothills stations, hill stations, linear pattern of development is being shown. So one type of city growth which has taken place in India is what? It is linear pattern. There is also corridor. Corridors have grown where? In railway. Along railway lines. There has been growth of corridor. So corridor type of pattern has grown along the railway lines of India. So it is railway alignment. So this is one pattern of geometrical pattern which is shown by the cities of India. Then एक दूसरे तरह का pattern है, वो सब जो मैंने बोला वो लिखा हुआ है यहाँ पर, urban agglomeration and clusters. ठीक है? So what is urban agglomeration? देखो simple है कि suppose एक city, this city was growing. So this was the original city. This growth of the city occurred like this. Now this city has expanded. While this city was expanding, what it did, it incorporated several already existing ring towns. So they became now part and parcel of this city. So this is what? It is one city which is also made up of several towns. But they are becoming what? Contiguous. They become united. So this phenomena is urban agglomeration. Urban agglomeration. ठीक है? But ये city is behaving as a growth pole. ठीक है? Now there would be many of them which cannot find space in the city because of high land rent. So what they would do? Can I say, will they tend to settle in the satellite towns or nearby other towns? Will they also attract functionalities because of the strong pull by this city, main city? So several industries here and there, it would grow. Now difference here is, these are not contiguous. Can you see? Here they are separated by urban, agricultural fields. Like for example, part of Jaipur is also part of the NCR. But if you go to Jaipur, towards Jaipur, can we say that we'll be finding that there would be some agricultural enclaves which we find in between? But जब हम दिल्ली से गुड़गांव जाते हैं, do you find any agricultural enclaves? No, we don't find. ठीक है? So again, there is what? It is part of the urban agglomeration and there is one cluster, Delhi cluster. So ये जो पूरा area है, this we are calling it as the cluster. इस cluster में क्या है? There is urban agglomeration present. ठीक है? So there is a difference between what is urban agglomeration and urban cluster. Now, you tell me, can I say that if we look into this situation, both these patterns are visible in India? Why? Why growth of urban agglomerations? Simple है यार, इतनी बार मैं थक चुका हूं बोल बोल के. Because our model of development, we have followed growth pole model of development. So it would give rise to growth poles. Urban clusters are basically what? Can I say they are nothing but industrial regions and clusters? They are nothing but industrial regions and clusters. देखेंगे अभी, मतलब सेटेलाइट टाउन टॉपिक है, आई विल टॉक अबाउट इन डिटेल व्हाट इज द नेचर ऑफ सेटेलाइट टाउन्स. ठीक है, सो दैट इज बेसिकली व्हाट, दैट इज द इंडस्ट्रियल क्लस्टर्स विच हैव ग्रोन. सो यहाँ पर दिस डायग्राम टॉक्स अबाउट हाउ देयर इज मेजर अर्बन एग्लोमरेशंस and also the major clusters of which have been established. You can see majority of them are essentially what? These are industrial clusters. ठीक है? So why urban clusters and urban agglomerations have grown? Because of them being growth poles and industrial clusters. ठीक है? That is one thing. अब इसमें सेंसस हमारा एक और चीज आइडेंटिफाई करता है, urban shadow zone. So what is an urban shadow? Suppose if a city is growing so fast, the pull of the city is so strong that it is not allowing growth of any other town in the neighborhood. क्योंकि सारे रिसोर्सेज कहां पे आ जा रहे हैं? उस सिटी में सेंट्रलाइज हो जा रहे हैं. So its growth is so strong that it is not allowing any other cities to grow in the neighborhood. Census says that the definition is within 75-meter radius of the city, there is no such towns to be found. This phenomena is referred to as urban shadow. So the main city is doing what? It is casting a very strong shadow in the neighborhood, which doesn't allows the urbanization to flourish. ठीक है? So neighborhood remains what? It remains underdeveloped. So this is referred to as urban shadow. For example, it was seen that shadow was distinct in Hyderabad, Nagpur, Jaipur, some of the areas. The urban shadow influence could be seen. ठीक है? So this is one thing. Then third important pattern which was seen, geometrical pattern, was phenomena of urban dispersal. Urban dispersal. So urban dispersal क्या है? It is distribution, there is uniform distribution of cities. They are very dispersed. They are found in dispersed manner. Very small cities. Big cities, very large urbanization levels have not been reached. Small towns are found to be what? They are found highly dispersed throughout this area. That means here what has happened? Number of small towns would have risen. One type of towns would have been, can I say, rural market-based towns, bazaar-based towns? Can you see one important area is the alluvial plain? Can I say it is a very important agricultural zone? So it would have given rise to several such rural market-based towns. So several small cities would be located, distributed, dispersed, are found in dispersed manner. Here the level of urbanization would be low because those cities are what? They are very small in size. Okay, similar type of pattern was found in Chhattisgarh, again agricultural area. Deccan Plateau, again important commercial agriculture area. Saurashtra, again important commercially agricultural area. It is also black soil, देखा है हमने. Tamil Nadu Plateau, here also important commercial agricultural area. So these agricultural belts of India have given rise to what? So many number of small towns, lower classes of towns. However, they are unable to become bigger. Why they are unable to become bigger? Because they have been unable to develop factories. याद है हमने देखा है, when town begins to become bigger, when it is becoming the early mature town, कब बनता है वो? जब उसमें फैक्ट्रीज का इमर्जेंस होने लगता है. Those factories provide more employment and thus are able to attract more number of people. हमने देखा था टेलर का क्लासिफिकेशन, ठीक है? So there will be finding that this kind of situation would be seen. ठीक है? So that is the situation of urban dispersal. So this is your topic which is mentioned in paper 2, urban development topic. ठीक है, जिसमें हमें अर्बनाइजेशन पैटर्न की बात करनी है. ब्रेक लेते हैं.